Go. Friends, welcome to the program Pluralism in Politics. This is every second Sunday of the month from 12 to 1:30. How to run to a public office. How do you want to be a mayor, senator, congressman? We will bring guests from different fields who have never run, who have never had anything to do with politics, but ran successfully and became politicians. And we will also bring people with resources who can train you how to run for the office, and they will also give you a lot of resources to raise funds, reach out in the community. All of us over a period of 12 months or 24 months will be providing this information. We hope you can bring your friends to listen to the program and join us and learn how to run for an office. If you feel, as Tolu was mentioning earlier, if you feel that the congressmen and senators are not doing their job right, you feel you can do better job, then you are the right candidate to run for public office. Alia, you want to share some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate your introduction. And just a reminder to everyone that, the objective of this event is to encourage, motivate, and empower the working class progressives to run for public office. And as Mike said, we hold this session on second Sunday of every month. And if you're passionate about seeing an America that values human rights and safeguards everyone's way of life, then now is the right time to make it happen. Depending on your level of interest, you have the option to choose from the several available public positions in federal, state, or local levels as to which one you would like to serve in. So in these sessions, we'd like to, help you and understand like what does it take on your part, and we invite guests who also share their experiences. So a strong desire to serve, ability to work hard, and a lot of love for the people and respect for the truth. These are some of the things that are needed to run for office. And Mike, would you like to add more to that?
Sure, we'll bring monthly guests, as we mentioned earlier, who ran for successfully to the office and making a difference, especially the new ones like AOC, for example. They're brand new, they're never in politics. They came and making a difference, making an impact. As you mentioned, the progressives, we want more and more of people to be inclusive, and such people are inclusive. And we will provide you with the tests. We are not Republican or Democrat. We are bringing this for people to learn to run for the office. And then we are going to provide you the test next month. If you take the test, a quiz, at the end, it will tell you whether you align with Republicans or Democrats based on your inclinations. And then you can choose wherever you want to go, but the training will be given here. That's about it. And also thanks to Alia, she represents the Virginian Muslim Political Action Committee.
Sure, I can say a few words about that.
Sure.
Thanks, Mike. So Virginia Muslim Political Action Committee, kind of known as VMPAC, is a registered nonpartisan political action committee of Muslim Americans living in Virginia. It was formed in May 2005 as a coalition of several pre-existing active Virginian PACs. And the goal of VMPAC is to raise awareness of various issues, educate the public about the political process, and provide opportunities to stay engaged.
Sure.
And Mike, you want to talk about Center for Pluralism?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Alia. Center for Pluralism is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We are committed to building a cohesive America, an America where every human, every American feels secure about his faith, ethnicity, race, or whatever uniqueness he or she has. And we are dedicating our effort to shaping the future of America. If you want the right politicians, we got to train them, we got to orient them, and that's what we aim to do here at this program. And pluralism has got four aspects that we are doing. Pluralism in religion, we do that on the first Sunday of the month. Pluralism in politics, that is second Sunday. Third Sunday, we have culture. And fourth Sunday is generic about how a pluralism can exist in family. So this is about pluralism in politics. And thanks, Alia. And we can ask Tolu to say a few words.
Absolutely, Brother Tolu, please go ahead, introduce yourself. Um, this is your
Sure.
chance.
Sure. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tolu Taniolu. I am a mechanical engineer by degree and an amateur policy writer for fun. Um, what I wanted to say is that I think it is important for us to get involved. It's important for people to run for local office, especially when you don't feel that your politician is listening to you, especially when you feel that so many people are checked off. The reason why people don't vote is not because they don't care, it's simply because, let's be real, unless you have a ton of money, a ton of name recognition, you are very famous, you come from a think tank, or you have the quote unquote right pedigree, our entire media and culture trains us that your opinion doesn't matter. There are plenty of people who do not have a lot of money, who do not have the right connection, but they are hungry. They are willing to knock on every door, phone bank every day in order to make your lives better. So I'm encouraging people to get involved as much as you can. I understand that this is a labor of love. I know that many of us are, quote, working families, we're working professionals, and we do not have the amount of time and resources that we can literally just drop hundreds of thousands of dollars and just say, hey, we saved democracy. It is a grassroots, boots on the ground work that needs to be recognized. And just to let you know that not only do I encourage you to run for office, but I will say this, that if you run and you win, make sure that you do not forget where you came from, especially with the grassroots, especially the people that door knock on you. Those are your constituents. Your constituents are not the bureaucrats in Washington who will beat you down. Everyone has their own different style. Everyone has their own different sense of politics. But the one thing that I will say is never, and I mean never, abandon your base. Never abandon your supporters. Never abandon the people who put you in office. Because if you do, they will find someone else who will listen to them.
Tolu, you are basically speaking about community organizing and reaching out to the people. Talk a little bit more about it.
A little bit. Oh, you mean a little bit? Well, it's just that what I imagine is that you have to, first of all, you have to know your district because of gerrymandering. It's going to be easier in some places and easier and harder in those places. Number two is that you have to be able to speak to your audience. And that means that whatever policies that you have, don't basically flip flop, but be honest with your constituents. Because so many politicians try to do this cookie cutter Machiavellian, let's listen to, what the think tanks believe. No, honestly, speak from your heart, speak from your mind, but actually know what you are talking about. Know the kind of the kind of talking points that are going to be used to dissuade your argument. You have to be able to argue for your policies, and you have to be able to argue for your side. You're going to have to be able to door knock. It is an intense amount of sacrifice. And if I may say something like, even if you lose, do not be discouraged. Some of the best people that we have on the state and local level have run once, twice, three times, four times. They keep running. Eventually, you will get there, or at the very least, your policies will get there.
Absolutely. 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 I 100% agree with you, Tolu. And just want to add one thing to that, that before they actually, start introducing like, okay, what are they going to do for the people? I think if we backtrack, they need to go into their communities. They need to listen to the people. They need to understand, like you said, don't use the cookie cutters, right? Understand the policies that impact their communities, their constituents that they're going to, be running in, because it might be different depending on the area and all that, right? So it's really, really important that they're very good at listening. That skill is so important in politicians, right? And good candidates to be able to win and to be able to relate to other people. Listen very carefully, right? And then kind of give validation back to people that you understand their issues and you are willing to help them, come up with the solutions together. And then you will base your policies based on those solutions that you come up together. Then you will use those to build the policies. I think this way you get you build good relationships, you build good trust also with the people. So just some things that I wanted to add.
Oh, there's something, more things to add? Oh, sorry. Sorry, what are you talking to me?
Yes, I mean, some of the things that you said, I just wanted to add to those, that, listening to your constituents is very important for candidates. People who want to run, it's important for them to get to understand their community, get involved in the community like a year before you actually run. So, you build relationships, you understand your community issues. Because if you kind of just run all of a sudden, people don't know you, it's kind of hard, right? It's better
Yes.
if you
If I
go
may
to the
say,
cause, yes, if you get involved in community,
yes,
whatever
if I
programs
wanted to
are.
say this, 80% of races is just name recognition. It's just name recognition. If people know your name, people know your face, if people know that they can trust you to fight for them, then they will vote for you. That's both the good and downside about about the whole political process, because you can have the right policies, you can be willing to fight, but if no one knows who you are, people are not going to trust you. And when people only have the only power they have is their vote, they want to put it into someone who believes that has the best outcome for them. So our plans is basically, I know this is COVID, but I say meet people, have as many town halls as you can, get involved with labor and unions, because they will be the most effective mechanism. Get involved with positive departments of commerce. I know a lot of them are mega pro business centers. So what I would say, again, repeat, what I would say that if you want to get involved, not only get involved with the community, with community organizers, with labor, with commerce, with unions, and with nonprofit organizations that are aligned with what you want to bring, and make the best case forward for them. Always bring your A game. And listen, know how to speak, know how to talk, know how to debate, because it's an art of convincing people. You can have the best policies in the world, but if you do not know how to convince people, people will be unsure. You must be confident in what you say. You must be passionate on it. Now look, is every single one of your constituents going to agree with you? No. But if they know that you are willing to fight for them and you are going to be extremely convincing,
persuasion power is very important. So, yes. And again, this is why we are doing these sessions, to try to highlight some of the areas that candidates need to build the strengths in, and bring the incumbents, or bring the past candidates or current candidates who are challenging the incumbents, and learn from them. What are they doing? How are they overcoming the challenges? What made them run?
And sorry. Anything else?
Have someone joining us? So we have Bishop Chewy joining us. Welcome, Bishop.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
Great, thank you. And where are you joining us from, Bishop?
Cleveland.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, that's great. I am in Virginia, and Tolu
I'm in Maryland.
He's in Maryland. And we have Dr. Mike joining us again. I think somehow he had some technical difficulties, but he's joining us here again. Dr. Mike, are you back?
I'm back.
Okay.
My internet went down. It happens here once in 3 months. It goes out for a few minutes, comes back. I was completely taken back. How am I going to do? But I'm glad you are carrying on.
Yes. So Tulu and I had good conversation, and Bishop has just joined us, and I'm glad you were able to hop back. And I think Nadia is going to be joining us soon.
Okay.
We can hear from Bishop a little bit more. Bishop, would you like to introduce yourself more? Like, do you have a political background? Are you new to politics? Are you thinking to run? Do you know anyone who wants to run? So would you like to talk about, around those topics?
Probably a little bit of all the above. Um, let's see. I've worked with the AFL-CIO, and John Delaney in Maryland on those campaigns, um, as well as the Bernie campaign in 2016 and 2020.
It's okay. I was also involved in Bernie's campaign. I was a state delegate in 2016 and then also 2020. And I was part of the program called Muslims for Bernie. It was a national program. And I was a community connector from Virginia, ran a chai house, which we've continued. And we are kind of organizing for the 2021 elections coming up in Virginia. We have major elections coming up in Virginia. Governor, for lieutenant governor, for attorney general, and all of our House delegates. Those are up for rerun. So
you may want to share. You may want to share about your program on Saturday nights.
yes, and so recently, back in September of 2020, I learned about an organization that's running in Rhode Island. It's called Rhode Island Political Cooperative. And when I learned about that and the successes that they've had, I was very inspired and I was like, okay, we need something like that right here in Virginia. Actually, every state needs to build an organization like that, because what it is, it's building, like it will take time, but of course, the end goal is to build like a central shared services provider type of team that is there for the working class progressives who want to run, because right now we don't have anything like that. If someone wants to run right now, they're working class, they don't have the funds, they're like, oh, I want to run, I want to change things because I don't like the situation right now, but I don't know who's gonna manage my campaign, where am I gonna find volunteers, right? And all of that. And what Rhode Island Political Cooperative did was they built a shared services provider program, and they ran the campaign for their working class candidates. They recruited them, they trained them. So I started, when I learned about that, I'm like, we need that in Virginia. So I started working on that. In 2 months, we've come a long way. We meet every Saturday night also, and I can share in the chat about that too. We built like orientation deck to let people know what we've done, because if now new people join, it's a lot for them to catch up, like what we have done in the past 8-10 weeks. So I've built like a deck to get them, caught up on that, and then they can join the Saturday night meetings. We're building a very inclusive positions platform, and then we're going to get help from an organization to kind of change it into deeper like policy level. And I'm really happy to hear, Tolu, you were saying you do some policy, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I do.
So it would be great for if you could, help review our policy platform, right? And then, well, I'm calling it positions platform at the moment because it's very high level. It's not like at the policy level at the moment. And then we are trying to create report cards for candidates that are running, like, everyone who's running for governor, because it's pretty crowded races in Virginia, especially the lieutenant governor. We have like 10 people running. So we're trying to build report cards to see, okay, for each candidate, are they taking money from corporations? Especially Dominion is a is a dirty organization, okay, in Virginia, because it's rate hiking and they just charge consumers so much extra, and our legislator just lets them do whatever they want because they give so much money to the senators and all this, and we want to put an end to that. So we've created a pledge in which we will ask our candidates to take that pledge. They're not going to take any corporate money, and it will be people funded. And next, so once we build that report card, based on the report card, like who is it who's supporting Green New Deal, who is supporting the Virginia is like the 51st state in repeal. We want to repeal right to work laws. It says right to work, but like right to work laws are really the opposite of what it says, right? So
yeah, it's right to work for less.
Right. And that you can get fired without any reason, right? An employer can just let you go. So it's really, really bad, in Virginia. Like I said, it's the 51st state. So we are getting like some key positions. We want, before we endorse candidates, we want to make sure our candidates are aligned with those positions. You can't just give your support for free to anyone, right? I mean, when you interview someone for a job position, you look at so many things, right? Are they capable? What have they done in the past? You ask for references, right? So like, why don't we do that for the candidates?
I think that's a good idea. I think we need to include in the policy making, look at their record, Facebook record and the Twitter record, what kind of postings they have had, if they were inclusive or if they're exclusive, what is it about them? We need to put that all together in the policy making. So we bring out the candidate who most Americans would agree would be the right candidate to run for the public office.
If I may also say, are you familiar with a website called opensecrets.org?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's very, and we have another one in Virginia, which is called VPAP. So that is just, because what I'm doing is more statewide, it's Virginia based. Open Secret is more, for like, everyone, Congress and all that. So my focus right now is state level focus.
Okay.
So we use that one called VPAP, and it's like, it tells you whether they take money from Dominion, everything is listed. Right. Yes. So then we can say red flag, they take money from Dominion, they take money from Verizon. Right. So we want to make sure that, okay, if they did that, maybe they can return it, or at least going forward, they will say, we don't want to take that. Yes, we take a pledge. We will not take money from there. And then
if I may also, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sure. So I was just going to say that next week we have invited one of the candidates who's running for governor. He will be coming and sharing his perspective with us and answering any questions that the team has.
That is on Saturday night. That's
Saturday
on Saturday
night. Yes. So he just confirmed yesterday, and I still have to kind of create an announcement and start announcing that event yet. So you guys, are the first ones to know about that.
Yeah.
So it's like, they need to question our answers, whatever our concerns are. Be ready to listen to us and satisfy us, right?
Yes. If I may also add one more thing, that it's not just enough to, check the right boxes, because you can check the right boxes and, when they get into office, they're just going to do this. My entire thing is look for what are your policy decisions to make sure that not only you get in office, that make sure that the corruption ends. So if I may say, it's not enough to say, hey, don't take money from Dominion. What I was saying is that, what are you going to specifically do in office to make sure that once your time is up, whether you're like a state legislator or governor or statewide, what policies do you have to make sure that the next person does not take money from Dominion, does not take money from all those? What policies do you have directly in place to make sure that, because the whole purpose of this is to make sure the corruption ends. I mean, there's no sense in having one good
Absolutely,
be
absolutely.
there.
I totally concur with you, and we have like done a lot of thinking forward, and we've created a pledge that covers all of that. So I
Okay,
would love for you to actually take a look. I will send you that information. And if you can, then take a look at what we've already done. If there's any gaps, please, make suggestions, but review that first. And you will see that most of things that you said are already covered in there.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you can repeat that in Maryland. And I would
no
like to
problem.
acknowledge, we have Sister Anna Bali, who has joined us too. Welcome, Anab. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm good, sister. How are you, Alia?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I'm good. Really glad to see you. I'm glad you were able to join.
Thank you.
Sister Anna, she is part of NAACP, and mashallah, she is very active in the community, very active in politics.
I haven't
She's
been
one of
doing.
the role models in our community. So,
Thank
Sister
you.
Anna, would you like to introduce yourself and, tell us what keeps you busy?
Oh, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon, rather. Late. Alia, you're so kind. I do a little bit here and there. I do try to do what I can. Of course, also I run a company and I'm quite busy. But of course, the year of 2020 and 2019, the politics has not been something that we can sit still and do nothing. So I do here and there, really, also with Adam Center Age Group whenever I can. And I also chair NASWA, North America Somali Women's Association. Has not been very active, but we do what we can. That's all we can do. Yeah. I'm here in Ashburn, Virginia. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Anab. I appreciate you sharing
I
about you.
do follow. I just want to say I always follow up Ali. I get a lot of resources from her and chat room, and she's my God. She's the
Well,
but. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for all you do.
You're welcome, Sister Anab. And I know you're part of the Chai House too. I was talking about that earlier, that how under Muslims for Barni, I created a Chai House.
Yeah.
And, we were very active in the community.
That's how before the Chai House, when you put that together, that was really what it started. I started like I can't be at least if I'm not contributing whole lot, at least I get a lot of information and activism that you do and inspiration. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. I mean, awareness is always the very first step, right? If you don't know, then you can't do anything. So being aware, and then when you're aware, then you kind of create the desire also, right? It's like, hey, this is happening. I should get involved too. Oh, we have Sister Nadia joined us now. Welcome, Nadia. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me here.
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, we are good. Welcome to our program. Sister Nadia, I also know her from, Muslims for Barni. She was a big part of that, the program in Florida. I think single-handedly she ran everything in Florida. And then, since then, she's been so involved in helping the Biden campaign. She did a lot of work for that too, in I think all of the states. And she's a wonderful writer too. She's written a lot of articles. She raises awareness and a lot of stuff. And she is an associate professor at Barry University School of Law and the coordinator of the Environmental and Earth Law Certificate Program. I should call up Professor Ahmad. So Professor Ahmad's over 40 scholarly publications focus on the intersections of energy, sitting, the environment, and sustainable development and draw on international investment law and corporate social responsibility. In 2016, she was recognized by the Orlando Business Journal as a 40 under 40 honoree of her leadership and community involvement. She has presented her research on the law and policy of advanced biofuels in Abu Dhabi, Cairo, Cambridge, Doha, Denver, New York, and San Francisco. She's a co-author of the third edition of the textbook Environmental Justice, Law, Policy, and Regulation. Carolina Academic Press is the publisher. Over the past 15 years, Professor Ahmed has held various leadership positions with the American Bar Association and the Florida Bar. In 2020, she was appointed to the Council of the ABA section of Civil Rights and Social Justice, the advisory board of the ABA Center for Human Rights, Dignity Rights Initiative, and the Florida Bar General News editorial board. Professor Ahmed earned an undergraduate degree in comparative literature, the University of California at Berkeley with high honors, law degree from the University of Florida, Levin College of Law, and a Master's of Law in Environmental and Natural Resources, law from the University of Denver, Sturm College of Law. So mashallah, we have such an accomplished sister with us today. Sister Nadia, let me give you the floor to you over. Please share with us, you also just recently ran, right, for a DNC committee position and you have won. Congratulations on that. So please share your experience with us and so we learn from your experience and everyone over here too. They're aspiring to run for public office.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank you, Alia, for having me here. I also wanted to thank Dr. Mike Lose for inviting me as well. I think it's really crucial for us to think about what we can do in our own capacities and where, like, what is possible, I think, for our communities. And to think like that we're not really running for ourselves for public office, but we're running for our causes and what we believe in. And so it's really about pushing those agenda forward, because if we don't have a seat at these tables, then there'll be decisions that are made about us without our input. And that's really, I think, what's important. And so back in, I think, April 2016 was, or 2019 was when the Bernie Sanders campaign was officially launched. And I think that was a point that I really wanted to get involved because I know during the 2016 election, I wasn't as involved as I could have been. And I felt that really, if we wanted to make a change, we had to do it, doing whatever we needed to do. So whether it was like organizing, the chai houses, like Alia talked about, I also did that in the Sanford area. And Sanford's actually a city that's north of Orlando. Sanford, is a historically a Black city. It's also the home of the Black Lives Matters movement. It was where Trayvon Martin was killed and gunned down. And so it has a historical significance in that sense, but there hasn't been much Democratic or party organizing in that area. And so I started hosting chai house events there with my community. And we had like phone banking events as well in Seminole County, which is a small county, which is a red county, but we were able to flip it blue for the first time for a Democratic presidential candidate since 1948. So basically for about a year or so, I worked on the Bernie campaign with Alia, and we worked, we were assigned, we worked on those tasks. And then afterwards, we saw how the pandemic started. And both me and my daughter served as Bernie victory captains. My daughter was 5 years old at the time. She's now 6. But she got really excited watching all the meetings that I was doing on Zoom. I remember there's I think there's some of those meetings had over 1,000 people on them. And it was really exciting to see the energy and working momentum and seeing that Muslim issues were really brought front and center. And I think from that campaign, we saw that that there was like no turn going back as a community for us. And so we really wanted to like, I guess once you get a taste of what it feels like to feel empowered and to where you're not being marginalized, you don't want to go back to that space as well. And so I think that was important for Senator Sanders' campaign, and what it brought. I think a great level of change in our community, just all across the board. I think this was like a broader sense of what we could do. And then based off of that, in 2020, when the DNC had started, I decided because the other problem that there was with the Sanders campaign in 2016 is that he lost, because of the number of delegates and super delegates. So we didn't know, I really didn't know how any of that system worked, but I just wanted to try to figure it out. And so, I got involved with the Florida for Bernie campaign, and I decided I was going to run as a delegate for the DNC in my community. And alhamdulillah, I was able to run, and I actually ended up getting the most amount of votes for that. And I think to understand how that process is and how it can work is important, because if you don't even try, you don't know what you can do. Because really it was a matter of my dad telling people at the community, me texting my friends and telling them about what can be done. And I think that's really like, we don't see how much we can do if we don't even try. So I think it's important. I didn't run for like political office. I just ran for the DNC, because I think also at the Democratic Party, what happens is they create their 2020 Democratic Party platform, and that becomes a document that is going to be the guiding principles of the party for about 4 years. So from 2020 to the next convention in 2024. And so what a group of us did is we started working on creating amendments, as well as submitting proposals to update the actual present document. And so with California delegate Hania Jodat Barnes, we founded an organization called Muslim Delegates and Allies Coalition. And what Hania and I did is we just went by state and looked in and saw, because each state has a different list of delegates, there's no like consolidated list until later on. And so what we did is we just went we went to each state's Democratic Party site and try to look up and see who are the delegates that have Muslim sounding names. So obviously we may miss people if they were Muslim and didn't have like a Muslim Arabic sounding name. But I think we could then reach out to the people and ask them, okay, are these other people that we didn't catch? Could you help us with that? So we did that for about all 50 states. We went in like from Alaska, like the Dakotas, Texas, and California. Like we just went in all the states that we could. I think New York, we didn't get the list because they had some issues with the voting. So they just, I think, assigned people, but we were able to get some people. I think really the week before the DNC, they were selecting their delegates still. But, through our contacts, we were able to put together. And so we had about 160 or so delegates that we had reached out to. And so that list that we had is something even the DNC doesn't have, because they don't collect data on our communities. They don't collect data about Muslims because they don't want Muslims to be organized in any real fashion or capacity. And so really, shoulders on us to organize our communities in this way. And so we worked on this document, and really the California delegation, that Hania was a part of, was a really strong Bernie delegation, and they had put forward different proposals on healthcare, foreign policy, environment, climate justice, and a whole like slew of areas. And so we took that information and we applied that, as well. And we reached out to other like larger Muslim organizations and got feedback from them. What is it that we want? Like, what are our aspirational goals? And so for me, going back to, this is the anniversary of September 11th this year, and 20-year anniversary, like thinking about, what has happened to our community in the past 20 years, and even going back past 30, 40 years, is what has been happening to our community? How have we been targeted? How have we been profiled? How have so much bombing happened to our countries? And there's no recourse, there's no response. And it's all, I think, done, taken for granted. So we really wanted to bring forward a lot of these issues and bring them forward to the light. And so the next thing that we also wanted to do is to really provide an avenue for Muslims. And so we created this document, and alhamdulillah, the 17-page document that we created, it was created by 16 people through very long Zoom meetings over 2 or 3 days. And then we submitted that to the DNC. The DNC accepted about 16 of the items we had submitted. And then we also worked on the amendment process where we didn't win, but I think it's because we didn't have the number of delegates. So we really want to go in 4 years and have about 500, 600 delegates. So we're a more powerful like voting bloc at the DNC. And this is something that anybody can really run for DNC. There's not much of a time commitment after that. And then after that, I worked on the election, with phone banking. And then, so that was really just like voter mobilization work that we had been doing. But then more recently, I had submitted my name to be precinct captain for my precinct. So that's actually the lowest level of elected office that you have. And me and my husband submit because they sit one male and one female. So I think we were able we both got in because nobody else was running. And so I think that was really, helpful in terms of, let me get my daughter 1 second.
That, Mike, you are muted. We can't hear you. But that was very inspiring to hear Sister Nadia talk and share about her experience. And she's totally amazing person. I don't know how she does. I mean, you just saw she has young children. Mashallah, she's so accomplished. And what she did is just amazing work that she did in so many states. And I think she continued to work. Like she also helped a lot in the Georgia too.
Yes.
So yes, just totally amazing person.
Back to you, Nadia.
Yeah, so thank you. No, and so then afterwards, we had the precinct captain. So my husband and I both did that. And then afterwards, they have elections for positions within the county Democratic Executive Board. So based off of that, we had, I didn't really want to run for anything that would involve too much work. So I ran for secretary because you just have to attend the meeting and take notes. And so I ran unopposed because there wasn't anyone else that was, I was interested in the job. And so I was just ready to jump in and do that. And so this was, I think, back in December or November. I think it was second week of November, we had the election for that. And then we found out, I've been part of also like this, it was a secret before, but now it's not a secret anymore. We had like this whole "not me, us" storm the castle movement for the Florida Democratic Party. Like all the former Bernie people, working in terms of trying to organize that, how we could, get seats within the Florida Democratic Party. So in December 29th, I submitted an application. And that was like just a few weeks ago. And I didn't really know what was involved, how to campaign or anything at all. I just got a list. Actually, even the way to become a part of the DNC, it's not advertised. Like even if I asked people who work there, they didn't know how to do it. They had to check with 4 or 5 other people. So I think you really have to keep asking people about what to do it. So anyway, I ended up submitting the application, and there's about 65 people that submitted applications to be a part of the DNC. So I ran on the slate with other progressives, and alhamdulillah, like 3 of us were able to get selected to be part of the DNC. We didn't win the position for chair, but what did happen though is that one of the candidates who was running for chair, she actually acknowledged Organization Muslims for Fairness and Democracy during her speech to the FTP. So like for me and others, like that was like where I felt like we arrived as a community, that during the speeches for the chair of the party at the state level, like they were recognizing our community, that we were a important voting bloc as well as an important community. And that was actually work that I hadn't been involved. That was like work that's been done for decades by so many other folks and communities and organizations. And so I think also I got the list. There's maybe about 200 or so people that are part of the list. And so about 200 or so people that were like running and whatnot. Here, you come here. You don't want to be a part. Okay.
That's our
So
future candidate right there.
yeah. So she yeah, and so there's about yeah, so it's 200 people or so. I don't know how many people. There's about 200, less than 200 maybe people that actually vote, because it's all conglomerated, like in terms of like it's all weighted votes and whatnot. So I made about 70 or so phone calls, but since I was like phone banking for like months, it wasn't that hard like to call like 70 people and just kind of convince them, to vote for you and that you would be a good candidate. And then after that, alhamdulillah, I had a lot of support from my community and also from my local elected officials. They also supported me because it was good to have a candidate, from Orlando area. And so I think like I was really, I think if you just try, like just kind of put yourself out there, you don't really know what's going to happen. I think that, we can be successful, and then, Allah really helps and guides us, and the help comes from where you won't really know or expect it. So I think it's really important to really just try to do that.
Uh, Professor Nadia, you mentioned they don't want to Muslims to organize. Who is they?
So I think the establishment does not want Muslims to organize. I think like the establishment Democrats, they're and I think also like there's a corporate interest as well, not interested in having Muslims organize, because I think
But is
they
there an opposition to it? If somebody submits a proposal, is somebody opposing it?
I don't think it, well, maybe I shouldn't say they oppose it. They don't encourage it. I think they also maybe don't reach out to our communities in the way that they should. But like when I submit, like I think there's a desire to engage with Muslims now. But I think that the fact that they don't give our resources to our community, I think that's where the opposition is. That like it's not to say don't do it, they just don't let us know.
Okay.
So there's a lack of information and transparency, which is across the board. And the other problem is that they won't actually tell us. Like they'll keep us in like positions where we don't really do anything. Like we're just kind of be rubber stamping
Got it.
what they do.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the opposition is. So it's a little bit more subversive and like blatantly excluding us. But at the same time, I think the blatant exclusion also happens. We saw that at the DNC level when they excluded Sister Linda Sarsour from being a part of they made comments against her. And then we also saw that we were organizing in Florida. They actually canceled one of our events because they didn't like one of the Palestinian activists who was part of the slate. And so we told them we're not doing the event. Like if you're going to cancel, if you can't include all the speakers, then we can't do it. And so I think that, and then we blew that up. Like we didn't keep that quiet. Like it was newspaper articles published about that, because every time something like that happens, they're like, oh, you have to be hush hush because it's going to mess up the election race. But it's like, it didn't, because we saw how bad they lost in Florida. It's because they don't want to include our community. So now I think they're starting to rethink the way that they've been doing things.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Stacey Abrams in Georgia, and she understood this very same situation, but she assertively came forward, organized, and got people to be involved. And finally, there are two senators, two Democratic senators. I'm glad they won the election, because in the Senate we have a balance now. Anytime you see an overwhelming majority of Republicans or Democrats, the decisions are made basically unilaterally by one party. And I think by giving 50-50, we are making the senators work hard to bring a candidate for approval who is acceptable to most people. And this is the right form of checks and balances. And you are very involved in it in the Georgia elections, as earlier mentioned in the Florida elections. Can you tell a little bit about what was your involvement in the Georgia elections?
So I think one of the things I want to mention about Stacey Abrams was not accepted by the party initially. Like she really had to fight her way tooth and nail to get to where she was even as a candidate. Like she was not the choice of the establishment. And so I think that's a lesson for us also as Muslims, you know, especially Muslim women, is like there's people that will tell us not to do stuff that we're not qualified to do it. But what I learned is like working on the Biden campaign is that we were actually able to flip 3 counties blue, which had historically been red. And that was done because we did targeted voting to Muslim, AAPI, South Asian communities. And we would not, and we kept doing that. We had no resources. We just had a Zoom link that we would use. And we had somebody who was Muslim who worked on the Biden campaign who would give us a daily VPB link. And that's really like we had about 1,000 volunteers that we had used during that period, that we had recruited different shifts. And then for Georgia, we realized that we don't need to ask anybody for permission. We'll just go ahead. We even set up the events before we even had an idea where we were going to dialer or an event. I think it was like Monday or Wednesday. Like we figured out there was going to be a runoff. We just created the event and mobilized, and we figured within 4 days we would figure out, like Hani and I, we said we'd figure out between that and then where we would get the link from. So we just set up the event like the same way we'd been doing before, and then we just kept organizing that way. And you know, alhamdulillah, like Hania reached out and was able to get a contact with candidate John Ossoff, now Senator John Ossoff's campaign, and they were actually very welcoming to us because in Georgia the environment, you know, deep South environment, you know, even in Virginia, still kind of considered part of the South, was very, very different. They were actually, they knew it wasn't just getting out the black vote, they also had to get out the AAPI vote. So they had, you know, we did postcards in about 5 different languages, and they set up, you know, we helped them with the translations, language, phone banking in 13 different languages. And what that is like just a phenomenal work that they were doing. And we were really, you know, honored and just glad to be a part of that. And we recruited about 5,600 shifts of volunteers. And so I think that, you know, like we're at the table, like we're important. And so I think it's really important to continue that momentum.
Sure.
Thank you, Nadia. Really appreciate all the amazing work that you have done and you continue to do. I know you're really busy. You probably have to go soon. I wanted to like kind of just start, with the question and answer. So let me start with one question, and then others can, also put their questions either in the chat or get ready to ask them. So, based on your experience and working for so many candidates, what would you say are some of the traits to have or to look for in someone as a potential successful candidate for public office?
I think it's somebody who's willing to take risk. I mean, it's hard to like say if like there's a secret formula, but I think it's important to see, like what I saw is like if somebody cares about like and will be willing to like reach out, to my community, then I think that's important. Like if they want to talk to me, I think that's a pretty low litmus test. But if somebody's even willing to acknowledge me, like I endorse people just because they'll ask me, because nobody bothers to do that. I think the fact that they don't see us as a political liability, that's important too. I mean, these are low bars, but I think that's our starting point, is to think about candidates who will acknowledge us openly and not just privately.
Thank you. Anyone else has any questions for Sister Nadia?
Well, we appreciate Professor Nadia for sharing your experience and how to community organize and why should one run for the public office. And we really appreciate it. And if you have time, please stay on. Dr. Naila Ali Khan is joined us. Alia, you may want to introduce her.
Does anyone have any questions for Sister Nadia? Because I think she has to leave before we start with Naila.
Yes. Let's move on.
Okay. So we have sorry, I'm just
Friends, you're listening to the program Pluralism in Politics every second Sunday of the month. is the program particularly is designed. Why should one run for public office, or what does it take to run for public office? And here we have Dr. Naila Ali Khan will be joining us.
So Dr. Naila has joined us. Thank you so much, Dr. Naila, for joining today. Dr. Naila Ali Khan is a professor at Oklahoma State College, Midwest City, Oklahoma, and teaches at Oklahoma City Community College as well. She also taught as a visiting professor at the University of Oklahoma. Formerly, she was a professor at the University of Nebraska, Kearney. She received her PhD in English literature and her master's in post-colonial literature and theory of the university at the University of Oklahoma. Dr. Khan was honored by the Journal Record as one of the 50 women making a difference in Oklahoma in 2019 and 2020. She is author of several published articles, book reviews, and editorials. As an educator, her goal is to engage in reflective action, working with diverse cultural and social groups, questioning the exclusivity of cultural nationalism, the erosion of cultural syncretism, the ever-increasing dominance of religious fundamentalism, and the irrational resistance to cultural and linguistic differences. Her unflinching commitment to pedagogy, scholarship, and her unrelenting faith in a critical focus that education can provide motivate her to build bridges across racial, political, and ideological divides. Dr. Naila, the floor is yours.
Before she goes, Dr. Naila Khan, welcome back again. And my
Thank
first
you.
question to you before you make your comments is, you are one of the most capable persons I have known. What does it take to run for public office? The guts, which you have plenty. And the second thing is expressing the ideas and thoughts and policies eloquently, and which you do. And I think you should run for senator from Oklahoma.
God willing, from your
And we will
mouth to
support you on
God's
that.
ears. Yeah. Thank you so much. And Alia, thank you for that long and very kind introduction. So
I'm so happy to meet you, Dr. Naila. This is my first time, and I hope it won't be the last.
Absolutely, absolutely not. It's a pleasure to meet you, Alia.
Thank you.
All right, so I live in the American Midwest, and the American Midwest has been good to me. I have enjoyed living and working in the states of Oklahoma and Nebraska. I have learned a lot from the tertiary institutions as well as the professional and community organizations that I have been affiliated with. The howling winds of this region constantly remind me about the purpose of life, which is greater than merely existing. I believe and trust in the courage to reach out to those who don't have much in common with me in order to forge connections with them. And the howling winds of this region also remind me that we as Americans crave a world in which social justice, political enfranchisement, cultural pride, and self-realization are the order of the day. I have emphasized in my writings and in my public lectures as well that the identity of a state or a nation cannot be built on unquenchable hate, and certainly not on cashing in on the pain and grief of other people. It is, or at least it should be inconceivable in the day and age of a global economy to reject, to spurn the concepts of irrationality. We need to espouse and embrace the concepts of reason, rationality, and political and moral ethics. the perpetuation of a politics that emphasizes and reinforces cultural myopia in societies as diverse as those that we have in the United States would be the bane of our existence. This damaging short-sightedness results in intolerance, arbitrary justice, tyranny, and ignorance. Dissatisfaction with the policies of government should not, however, encourage the glorification of extremist or reactionary politics. Civil society, local community organizations, and political institutions are closely interconnected. In order to create democracy, there must be a minimum of participation and adequate diversity or pluralism in a society. A consolidated democracy has to be open to diverse opinions, dissents, and differences of opinion on policies, all of which are important elements of every democracy. There must, however, be some shared consent on fundamental principles. One of the things that local organizations across the United States, and I will talk about Oklahoma, where I live and work, can agree upon is the indispensability of a quality education. Democratic institutions, social and educational institutions cannot function in the United States without participation by citizens. Nurturing a civil society that bridges racial and religious divides is a prerequisite for the effective and legitimate functioning of democratic institutions. Despite the several letdowns, and we have seen several in the past week, we need to remember that the process of democratization is an evolutionary one and does not provide instant solutions. To further this process, it is just as important to maintain the diverse regional, religious, racial, and cultural ethos of the United States. And I said this in my last talk as well, Mike, that I end on the hope that by reminding myself and the rest of you of Martin Luther King's emphasis on building the courage to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope, we will all forge ahead. As Abraham Lincoln reminded us in 1858, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And the truth is that it is time, high time, to summon up the courage to build a politics of construction. And that politics of construction will enable us to create a coherent society and make the world a much better place. I would like to say a little about the participation of women in politics. And I will focus here on my state of adoption, which is Oklahoma. So not enough emphasis is laid on how women in Oklahoma, women of different political, religious, ideological, and class orientations, can become advocates for other women in emergency and crisis situations. There is a serious lack of discussion of the roles that women can take, political and activist roles that women can take, because the dominant perception still is that politics and policy making are linked to the powerful male realists. rather than with the maternal negotiating woman. So women, unfortunately, get relegated to the soft areas of family affairs and social welfare. Women's rights and gender issues in Oklahoma and across the United States really remain secondary to political power. Today, in the United States, women representatives constitute a minority, increasing the pressures of high visibility, unease, stereotyping, and over accommodation to the dominant male culture. Because women do not want to be seen as overly soft. They fear being condemned as overly soft. Educated women should fully participate in political life across the United States and not make a virtue of helplessness and destitution. As I've said before, Mike, and you know this, it is no fun to be a damsel in distress. We can build on the earlier gains, and a pluralistic government can now ensure further economic, social, and educational gains for women and other marginalized groups. Obviously, an important challenge is to create new openings for women to discuss public issues and become active participants. To that end, in Oklahoma and in other parts of the United States, it is necessary to revive and reinvigorate civil society institutions, local organizations that could initiate groups to assemble freely and express shared interests, values, and purposes. As this happens, women citizens involved in civil society groups, as well as government officials, can forge strategies for the reconstruction and evolution of society. People must learn to work across racial, ethnic, and ideological divides and insist that everyone be included in democratic decision making and that everyone be given full access to basic social services. That is my spiel for today.
Well, the question for you, you mentioned about pluralism, pluralistic government. What does it mean to you, and how people can understand it in simple terms?
In simple terms, a pluralistic government to me is an inclusive government. That a government that is not representative of a monocultural society, or a government that is not representative of just the majority racial, ethnic, religious group, but a government that creates space for representatives of various racial, ethnic, and religious groups. A government that recognizes the need to enable various racial, ethnic, and religious groups to carve a niche for themselves, that recognizes their needs, that recognizes that as citizens of the United States, those groups need to be given access to basic social services. And by basic social services, I mean quality education and quality healthcare. We do not all look the same. We do not all think the same. We do not all come from the same religious or socioeconomic or ideological background. So a pluralistic government would recognize diversity in society and would celebrate that diversity instead of demonizing it or instead of criminalizing it. And a pluralistic government would recognize that we do not want to create a homogeneous society in which everyone looks the same, sounds the same, thinks the same, worships the same, but that we celebrate difference and give space to everyone to express themselves in a democratic environment.
That is a great outline of a pluralistic government. Appreciate that. And why must we or the government include, cross the social barriers, include every race, ethnicity, culture, and the diversity? What was the benefit to the general public or the majority of the public?
As you and I well know, all of us bring a lot to the table. So people of various racial, ethnic, religious, and ideological backgrounds, for all of them, it is important to create common ground. As I said in my presentation, it is important to agree to have fundamental agreement on shared interests, values, and goals. And those of us who have chosen the United States as our home, and those of us who are now citizens of this great and diverse nation, can all agree that we want to live in an improved world. We want to reconstruct our society. We want to revive civil society institutions in this country. And by doing so, all of us would be able to strengthen democratic, educational, health institutions in this country. And all of us would be beneficiaries of that improvement. So when we include every racial, ethnic, and religious group in the reconstruction of our nation, in the revival and the improvement of our society, all those groups bring their talents to the table because all those groups are stakeholders. So the common ground, regardless of our racial differences, regardless of our religious differences, the common ground is to see a greatly improved, enriched, and reinvigorated United States that strengthens its position as a leader of the democratic world. That is our common ground.
Indeed.
And we can all bring our shared talents to the table in order to enable that.
I believe listening to you, reading about you and your efforts, I think you're very well qualified to run for the public office. And we hope you will run for the public office very soon.
Thank you.
Alia, you have questions?
Well, I have some comments before I have questions. So thank you so much, Dr. Naila. This is, it was really amazing to hear from you and, to learn of so many things that you've accomplished and all the advice that you gave. I think you beautifully summed up in everything that you've said. It was kind of based around that our democracy, right? It requires participation. So if people don't participate, we are not going to have a democratic society. So participation of everyone is so important. And this is, why we are doing this program and this event is to motivate people, to encourage people who want to run for office or just want to generally learn how to better participate in the political process. This is why we are doing it, because we have to encourage, like you said, the minorities, the working class people, because the government at the top, yes, it should be inclusive. Yes, it should be representative of everyone, but we know they are not going to do this for us. So we have to make those efforts ourselves And we have to recruit the right people, we have to train them, and then we have to help them to run for office too, right? So this is, again, like the objective of this program that we are currently doing is we bring guest speakers that will help motivate the folks who want to run for public office. And we are hoping that today you were able to, yes, I'm sure you inspired. And then the speaker just before you also, mashallah, like, she was also a woman, and she talked about a lot of challenges, like you said, especially women, right?
Yes.
We have to fight for everything.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
so
very
she
true.
she shared about her experiences, and she said, "Don't give up, keep fighting, because this is, you will experience that you will be dismissed, but continue. Start with that kind of like lower level, but participate." She said, "Go to the party, local party, apply to be like your precinct chair, your local precinct, right? Apply to be maybe a secretary or something, like you don't have to like do too much to get in, get your door in, get your foot in the door, right? And then work
Foot in
yourself
the
from
door.
it. So
Yeah.
participation is what you also emphasized on, and inclusion. When we are reaching out, right? Reach out to everyone. Don't leave it, because if you don't reach out, then they're not aware. So my question to you was like, okay, what is like one leadership lesson that you have learned that you wished someone had shared with you earlier in your journey?
It's a good question.
That's a great question, Alia. I'm involved with several organizations in Oklahoma, and I think what I've learned over the years is number one, how important it is to reach out to people, and open-mindedness. You see, so I was raised in Kashmir, a society that, like Oklahoma, is conservative. And I had a privileged upbringing. So I really was not required to listen to everyone, every section of society. But living in Oklahoma, now that I'm a minority here and I know what the minority experience is like, I have realized how important it is to be open-minded, to listen to everyone without condemning, without judging, and with empathy. That is the only way to bring every stakeholder to the table. You see, unless you are willing to recognize where the people you are talking with are coming from, what their situation in life has been, without that, communication is impossible. And I wanted to emphasize that when every ethnic group, when every religious group is given a voice and made to feel like a stakeholder, they feel more invested in the growth of the nation. They feel more invested in strengthening democratic institutions, civil society institutions in the nation. You see? So no one is alienated or no, or apathy, indifference. I see that apathy in young people sometimes. Here in Oklahoma, I see it in Kashmir. They're indifferent. They're like, what difference does it make whether I exercise the right to vote or not? It really doesn't matter. I don't have a say. No one cares about my opinion. So it is important for all of us to make those people feel like stakeholders, to make them feel like their voice counts, that they need to stand up and be counted, you know? And that will lead to much less criminalization in society. Historically, in the United States, for instance, we have seen some minority groups, including African Americans, historically have been criminalized, have been demonized. But again, if that group is brought to the table and we recognize their voices and we recognize them as stakeholders, they will be a lot more invested in the growth of the United States. And it's the same with Muslims, it's the same with young people. So, in order to, over the past several decades, we have seen how pervasive Islamophobia has been in the United States. So, the more work we do to dispel false notions that those who propagate Islamophobia, the more work we do to dispel those false notions, the better it will be for the nation as a whole. Because then Muslims will not be demonized. Muslims will feel like they belong, like they have a stake in the growth of the United States, like they have a stake in the improvement of this society. And that's a win-win for everyone, right?
Indeed, it is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And, you know, in Northern Virginia, where I am from, it's a very diverse society. And we are so blessed to have some Muslim representatives already in our General Assembly. And actually, one of them is running for lieutenant governor. We have a big election year here.
Great.
Sam Rasool, Delegate Sam Rasool, he's been a delegate for 4 years, for 8 years now, for 4 terms. And he's running. And then we have a senator also, Senator Ghazala Hashmi. She's Muslim. Then we have another Muslim. So we have 3 Muslims right now in the General Assembly and several school board members. And we are encouraging more also to, you know, participate and run. And like you said, it's like the more we interact, right, the more we kind of shatter those myths and people understand us better. And yeah, you mentioning of Kashmir, I really feel like very connected with you now, because my also background, my father is from Kashmir. So
Very nice.
By the way,
Which part
Alia,
of Kashmir is she from?
yes, so but he was when he was he's from Jammu Kashmir.
But do you know which part of Jammu and Kashmir?
I was very young when we moved to England, so I grew up in England. But my father, I know he's from Kashmir, and he still has family there. So I, you know, when you mentioned Kashmir, I was like, okay, yes, you know, we have to stay in touch. I feel I have so much to learn from you, you know, mashallah, like you're
Alia,
so, yes.
Thanks.
Dr. Naila Ali Khan is the granddaughter of Sheikh Kashmir, Sheikh Abdullah. And she
Mashallah,
wrote an extensive
mashallah.
book on him.
Okay, yeah, my father knew the Abdul Qayyum.
Abdul Qayyum was from Pakistan, Kashmir, the Pakistani side.
Right. So my father had family, like half of the family was on the India side, half the family was on the Pakistan side.
Yeah, that's the plight. That's the plight of a lot of Kashmiris.
Yes, yes. So, but he's from the family of Sardar Abdul Qayyum. So very nice meeting you. And I want to open up to others too if they have questions. We are coming close to 1:30, so please feel free. Sister Anab, we have a very good community organizer here, Sister Anab, if you would like to ask Nala a question.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Khan. I appreciate. Sorry, I didn't mean to show my face. I am not prepared. I'm not prepared. I really am not prepared, but thank you so much. I do have a nephew at Oklahoma University, Abdi Fatah. I'm not sure what department you teach. As soon as you said Oklahoma, I'm like, oh my gosh, she could be one of the instructors or professors of my nephew.
Is he a Norman? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Which campus? Is he on the Norman campus?
You know, because I haven't been there, I don't know the sections, but I know he's in the engineering department.
Well, you could send him my email address and ask him to touch base with me.
I definitely will. Thank you so much. And on the other hand, this is just what jumped on my head when I came to know you. But my God, what an inspiration. I do feel both in the United States and in Somalia, where I'm from, of course, way back from what even we are talking, women are kept in the background and the back, and they don't have no representation whatsoever. I was recently there for my other nephew wedding, and I'm thinking, my God, I and women like me in the Western world really need to educate these women. I'm talking about back home. Forget, I mean, in America, they look up to us that we have actually run for the highest office in
Yes.
the nation.
Yes.
And we, you know, we were nowhere to be compared. But even though I do feel that we still have way to go, and I am, you know, Alia and I and all the women around Virginia, even though we have come a long way and we are proud of our accomplishment, we still have a long way to go.
I'm
So
standing right with you, Anna.
thank you so much, Dr. Kabosi. I appreciate. And you know, it's just that really we have to continue to, you know, continue to make ways for ourselves, because nobody, I feel, women, if we just wait for men to hold our hands and say, oh, come on, you qualified, it's not going to happen. Except you, like few of you, Doctor. So yes, we have to fight our way, we have to make our way, and we have to work. This country has a lot more opportunity than elsewhere. And even though we feel like we still have not given the equal opportunity, there is really not much stopping us from getting that. That's how I feel. So thank you so much for inspiration that you reinstalled in us, Dr. Khan.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Got the last word, Dr. Ali Khan. A few words so we conclude the program.
I wanted to ask Tulu also if he has a question too before we conclude.
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I do want to just say one thing to everyone is just that do not give up and just keep running. And let's be honest, they're going to, if you don't agree with, you know, the status quo policies or you want to change the system, they're going to attack you. They're going to basically, you know, have candidates who look like you and say that, hey, you know, a Black person or a Muslim, that person is more electable, or you know, you're stealing the seat from someone who you know knows the right people and rising through the ranks. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is just, you know, rank and file. They're going to feel that you're stealing something that is owed a seat, whether it's on the federal, state, or local level, that's owed to them. First of all, this is a democracy. No one is owed anything.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
the other
Thank you
thing.
for those reminders.
So
Yes, thank you for those reminders.
right.
And Dr. Naila, would you like to have some closing remarks and we will wrap up?
Well, I would like to reinforce open mindedness. I would like to reinforce the importance of building bridges across divides, and building those bridges takes diplomacy, it takes tolerance, it takes negotiation, and it takes introspection as well. You know, as Muslims, uh, we could be wrong about a couple of things. Do we need to listen to other groups and other? Do we need to accommodate the points of view of other groups as well? That political accommodation is very necessary in a democratic society. So continue to remain firm, steadfast, and we recognize that it is important to build bridges, not walls. So a politics of construction, not a politics of demonization, is what we embrace. So it, as you know, Anna pointed out, and Tulu pointed out, Alia, Mike, all of you, um, it is a struggle, and the path is not a straight and easy one. It's undulating, But the more allies we have and the more alliances we forge, the more interesting the journey becomes. And we will find allies in the most unlikely of places, in the most unlikely of groups.
Very true.
So as long as we continue to reinforce our shared values, interests, and goals, that is fundamental. It is possible to, then the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit.
We have to continue. We cannot stop. So thank you for your closing remarks. I think, what you said about build bridges, not walls. That is very true. It was demonstrated a couple of days ago that walls, they don't work. We saw people climbing up the walls, right? I mean, and they were like, build the wall, build the wall, build the wall. And then what did the wall? Did the wall stop them from going up? No, it didn't. So they actually negated themselves, building a wall doesn't work, right? So thank you for making that point. And also want to thank everyone for participating. I think Sister Anab was saying, you and Sister Nadia before you also were wonderful speakers, and you have really invigorated us and you've empowered us with what you've shared with us today. And hopefully someone from over here is inspired to run for public office. And Naila, maybe it's you, right? I mean, Dr. Mike keeps saying, run for Senate, right? So hopefully we will hear the news from you soon.
Yes, definitely. Inshallah, she will run and represent Oklahoma. Oh my God, that will be historic. And she will win.
It certainly would. It certainly would. And thank you to Mike and Alia Yu for having organized this excellent panel, this excellent discussion.
It's our pleasure.
Our pleasure. Thank you for coming. And Mike, would you like to wrap up?
I think all we want to say is every second Sunday of the month, we have this program for people to come and learn how to run for public office, how to be a good politician, what does it take. And we will be, every month, we will be adding speakers. And also we hope to bring how to find resources, how to find fundraising, how to reach out to the community. All these will be added on in the next few months. And that's all I wanted to say. And this will be on the YouTube. All you have to go to do is youtube.com, then plug in Center for Pluralism, and you get this, and it will be uploaded by this evening. Thank you very
Mike,
much.
Thank you for all you
like
do.
to put that in the chat? That what you just said, would you like to give that in the chat, that link to the YouTube? And then I remind everyone to please save the chat. I have shared some important talking points that were shared by Dr. Naila and also by Nadia previously. So please save the chat. There's no restriction. And again, thank you, everyone. And Mike, you can wrap up and finish the meeting.
Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon. Enjoy it.
Okay, thank
You
you.
as well.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. And Mike, do you think you could send my email to Anab, please?
Yes, we will do that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Khan. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alia. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow.